Freedom is a lonely thing if misunderstood. If we separate our lives too much from the expectations of others, does that mean we are destined to live in isolation? Is the pursuit of self-reliance just another way of severing our bonds with people? Tonight, we return to the courage to be disliked, to explore the paradox of true connection. Why it is only when we let go of approval and control that we find a deeper, more meaningful sense of belonging. Let's settle in. The night is quiet, and there is much to uncover. A week has passed since the young man's last visit to the philosopher, but instead of arriving with curiosity, this time he bursts in with frustration. "I almost fell for it," he exclaims. He'd spent the past few days wrestling with the idea of separating tasks, letting go of responsibility for what others think, focusing only on what he can control. But as he thought about it more, a deeper fear arose. If I stop worrying about others' opinions, if I stop seeking approval, won't I end up completely alone? The philosopher listens, nodding. This is the heart of the struggle. How do we balance self-reliance with the need for connection? Does rejecting the need for recognition mean rejecting community itself? The young man expects a simple answer, but what he receives instead is a radical idea. Connection is not found in seeking approval. It is found in contribution. 1. Why connection is not about seeking approval. Many of us believe that in order to be loved, we must be worthy of love, that people will accept us only if we are impressive, successful, or agreeable enough. But the philosopher challenges this belief. If your relationships depend on being liked, are they truly relationships at all? The young man hesitates. He had never considered that question before. We often mistake attention for connection, thinking that if people admire us, it means they care. But admiration is conditional. It fades when we no longer perform. Real connection is not about being needed. It's about being part of something larger than ourselves. The philosopher suggests that true belonging comes not from being admired, but from contributing to others in a meaningful way. Do the people in your life see you, or do they see what you do for them? Are your relationships based on performance or genuine connection? And what would it feel like to contribute without expecting anything in return? 2. The world does not revolve around you, and that's a good thing. The young man scoffs. If connection comes from contribution, doesn't that still make relationships transactional? The philosopher shakes his head. He introduces the idea of community feeling, the awareness that we are part of something far bigger than ourselves. You are not the center of the world, he says, but that is precisely what makes connection possible. At first, this sounds discouraging, but then something shifts. If the world does not revolve around us, then that means we are free from the weight of constantly proving ourselves. There was once a man who felt deeply insignificant. He believed his work did not matter, that he contributed nothing. But one day, he stood at the shore and watched the waves. A child near him picked up a small stone and tossed it into the water. The man noticed how the ripples spread outward, small at first, then growing, expanding beyond where the eye could see. In that moment, he understood. We do not have to be the center to make an impact. Even the smallest stone changes the water around it. When we shift our focus from what can I gain to what can I give, we step into a deeper, more lasting kind of connection. One not based on how others see us, but on how we contribute to the world. 3. The paradox of true freedom. The young man frowns. But if I accept that I'm not the center, won't I lose my sense of self? This is a natural fear. If we are not at the center of everything, do we disappear? But the philosopher explains, the strongest sense of self does not come from making ourselves important, but from making ourselves useful. There's a reason why people who serve something greater than themselves, mentors, teachers, caregivers, often seem deeply at peace. They are not trapped in the cycle of seeking validation. They have found something richer, purpose. When we let go of the need to be the center, we stop living in the exhausting loop of performance and validation. Instead, we find the kind of freedom that allows us to act from authenticity, not obligation. 4. The most powerful kind of relationship. The young man shakes his head. This all sounds good in theory, but what does it actually look like? How do you form relationships without approval? The philosopher smiles. By seeing others not as tools for your validation, but as partners in contribution. Most of us have been conditioned to believe that relationships are vertical. Someone is above, someone is below. A teacher to a student, a boss to an employee, a giver to a receiver. But true connection happens in horizontal relationships, where both people stand as equals, not performing for each other, but simply being. Imagine a friendship where you do not need to impress the other person. You do not need to manage their emotions. You do not fear being misunderstood, because the bond is not based on agreement. It is based on respect. This is the most freeing kind of connection. And yet, few people ever experience it, because in order to build horizontal relationships, you must first have the courage to exist as you are. Some people spend their whole lives chasing admiration, mistaking it for love. Others spend their lives seeking approval, mistaking it for connection. But true belonging is not something we earn. It is something we build when we release the need for validation, when we contribute without expecting anything in return, when we stop performing and start existing. We finally find the place we have been searching for all along. We find home. So tonight, let that be enough. Sleep well.